Hockey Inside Out, presented to you by The Gazette.
Welcome to the Hockey Inside Out show. I'm Montreal Gazette sports editor Stu Cowan. I'm joined today by columnists Dave Stubbs and Jack Todd, and a familiar face to hockey fans, Mr. Ron Roosh, longtime broadcaster and still a regular at the Bell Center press box with his own The Roosh blog, where he follows the Canadiens.
Still doesn't know anything about sports.
Now we can
stopped any of us.
Still trying to figure it out.
We can call them the $1 billion Habs now, Ron. How did this happen?
Well, you look at the history of this hockey club, and first of all, you were mentioning earlier, they nearly folded in the 40s. They were nearly moved in the 50s. Senator Molson bought the team at that time. And, you look at, and then they were really in trouble. But when George Gillette bought the team, Molson, no investors in Quebec.
Nobody in Quebec
Nobody
wanted them?
And he got the thing for, what, $180 million,
Oh my God.
80% of
Yeah,
the team.
Fire sale.
I think it
I
was,
probably could have leveraged that much myself.
Yeah, really. And
He was the
basically-
bogeyman, right? George Gillette was the bogeyman. When he bought this hockey club, everyone figured, oh, here comes the bad American who's going to commit strip it for
carpetbagger,
parts. Exactly. But, I mean, George Gillette wound up being everyone's favorite uncle.
Yeah.
Everyone had fun with this guy. George loved the team. When he finally had to sell it because of other pressures that he had on him, he cried, and these were not crocodile tears. George Gillette loved that team.
He's the kind of guy my dad would say, he'd shake your hand and pick your pocket, but you'd smile while you were getting your pocket picked. You know? He was a hustler, but he made no bones about it.
Yeah.
And it was a brilliant purchase on his part. My God, he hit it at exactly the right time with the Canadian dollar turning around.
Yeah.
The team got better. Everything happened at once, and he left town with a wad of money and blew it all on Liverpool.
Yeah,
That's it,
really.
right.
But the thing about it was he really set up an organization here too.
Yeah.
The Gillette Entertainment Group, where all of a sudden the Bell Center started to be a money factory in every way. The games all of a sudden were selling out, which they weren't before. And
What I don't understand is why didn't Molson see what could be done there?
At that point?
With the corporation, not the family.
You know,
they had
people
this-
were saying that the Bell Center was or the Molson Center was too big, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't sell it out.
And
there
Molson
was-
at that point, I think, was going back to its brewing business. It said, look, we just have to unload
which
this
it also
hockey team.
screwed up. You had this
take
great
a look at
thing.
the people they hired to run this hockey club.
Yeah.
Starting with Ron Corey and right on down, and you say, I mean, this was just an absolute mess.
Yeah.
And when he took it over, he got rid of all the dead wood, and it became a.
The great thing about George Gillette is he understood that he didn't know a lot about hockey. He came in, he said, you know what, I'm going to put a hockey operations department in, and for better or for worse, some of the guys that he put in there, we can revisit that, for days. But, I mean, he put people in there who we thought could run his hockey operations, and he stood back, and he let these guys run the hockey club. So he was not one of these owners who was constantly sticking his finger in the pie, was meddling all the time. And so that was a good thing, the way he
He fell in love with the team. I don't think he knew what he got when he bought this team, right? I think he bought them, and then he met like Bob Gainey, and he met all these Jean Beliveaus and all this, and I think he fell in love with the history of this team. And as you say, I think it did break his heart when he sold
I
them.
bet he'd love to have that Liverpool call back.
Oh, yeah,
Along with $1 billion or so.
that's a
that he
mulligan
lost
they
over
want,
there.
right?
Oh,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
No kidding. Now, with Jeff Molson, has got to be the happiest guy in Montreal right now. Quarter point of the season, his team's in first place.
There's
$1 billion team.
Not one thing that he's missing except that elusive 25th Stanley Cup, but at least he's put himself in position. Gainey used to always say that's where you want to be, that top 5 or 10 teams.
At U.S. Thanksgiving.
Where you
that's
have
what
a
he said.
where you have a real shot, and the Canadians have a real shot, whether you think they're going to win it or not. Financially, they could not be stronger in every way, and great. The Leafs are strong financially in every other way.
But the Habs are catching up now.
Oh, yeah.
You wonder if next year when Forbes comes out, if the Habs might actually catch
The
them.
Habs would love a bigger building now. Can you imagine that? I mean, they would love. They could add
Big O.
another full. Yeah, they could add another full level. That's the amazing thing when you go around the National Hockey League and you go into some of these other buildings. You walk in every place except for the United Center. Maybe it looks small.
Yeah.
You walk in and you look and there should be another full row of seats above that because you walk into the Bell Center. You look at us in the press gallery. We look behind us and the fans are still going
That's right,
above
7th
us.
floor.
They have my permission to knock down all those condos below and what was supposed to be the Field of Dreams and build a joint complex, a 25,000 seat arena for the Habs and a baseball stadium.
That's another thing that's painful, looking out that window and seeing the condos out there, realizing that could have been a downtown ballpark.
Now, the quarter point of the season, Ron, Max Pacioretty leads the team in goals with 10, points with 18, plus minus plus 10. Is he the MVP of this team for the first quarter?
Well, except he's in and out. You know, some days you don't notice him, other days you're there. My MVP is Price. I think he just been consistent from day one. But, you know, it's a pretty good choice, too.
Price, it isn't just his play with Price. It's what he transmits to the rest of the team. You know, that absolute calm back there, and it translates to everybody. Everybody is a little bit better because Price is back there.
And it's a scary calm, Jack. I mean, you watch him some days, you see all hell breaking loose around him. I mean, bodies are flying, and he's being bumped around the crease, and he's just sitting back there doing his job.
We used to criticize him for being too calm. There was
Yeah.
that period when he was struggling, right? That it looked like he didn't care.
I used to
agree
think he
with
was
Price,
too
yeah.
laid back, but he's always going to be the MVP just because of his impact on everyone else.
Yeah,
You
this
know,
club
even-
will go, as
yeah.
it has in the past, this club will go as far as Carey Price is going to carry them into the playoffs. Assuming they make the playoffs, as they should, they will go as far as Carey Price is going to take them.
One thing I'd love to see Max do, I know the other night when Galchenyuk was eating a couple of punches to the face and Max is on there, I'd love to see him once just go in and sort of defend one of his teammates. Not necessarily drop the gloves, but
What did
something, grab
McGuire
a guy
say?
or-
He needs somebody to piss in his cornflakes.
get him upset.
That's right.
Get him upset. Now, there have been some additions that GM Mark Bergevin has made. Who's been the most important addition to this team? Manny Malhotra, Yuri Sikac, or P.A. Peranto?
Well, Malhotra has changed the team by not doing anything. It seems they kept winning every face-off.
62.3% he's at.
But that was a 47% face-off team last year. It's now 55 or 56%. Everybody got better when Malhotra came in, and that's now, you know, with all these analytics and everything else, we're talking about possession and everything else. He's changed the possession.
The beauty
They have
of
possession off the
the
face-off.
beauty of a guy like Manny Malhotra is he has freed up Tomasz Plekanec to do what Plecky has been able to do. We've thought that he can play an offensive role, given a couple of decent line mates, instead of having this revolving door of line mates every second time that he was showing up at a practice or a game. He had different guys. He had no idea whether he was
And
punched or
taking
not.
his face-offs in the offensive zone, it's a big, huge change for
real
Plekanec.
Sure, yeah, so he doesn't have that amount of heat on him now.
Long term, I think Sikac is the pickup
Long
of
term,
all these
yeah,
guys.
I
But
think
short
you're
term, this season, maybe next, Malhotra has really changed the chemistry.
Plekanec last year, I calculate, Plekanec played on 18 different lines.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it was
You know,
crazy.
it's insane for a centerman that's that good to not have some consistency. That's why I always thought Yager would be the perfect guy on this team. Maybe not now, but a couple of years ago when he was available and wanted to come here, and Plekanec wanted him, and they
Didn't work out.
kept turning their back on him. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll be back after a short break, and we'll have a question from a HIO fan all the way from Moscow. Welcome back to the Hockey Inside Out Show. We have viewers across North America and really around the world who have been watching this show, and we've had responses from them. One of them is we have a question all the way from Moscow from Canadiens fan Ksezna Shetstakova. God, I hope I pronounced
Easy for
that
you to say.
correctly. Yeah, easy. Ron probably pronounced that. There we go. She's asking, what weakness of any particular player or the team in general would you want to correct most quickly on this team?
Well, the obvious one is the power play. This is dreadful. I mean, it's hard to believe that that group of players could play that badly as a group, and the coaching staff has no idea. One thing about power plays and penalty killing, that's coachable. Those are the areas where coaches have an effect. And why this coaching staff can't correct it, I have no idea. But it's
And
just
special teams, Ron, are such a huge part of the game nowadays. It's enormous how important the penalty kill and the power play are. And the thing, especially now with the inconsistency of National Hockey League officiating, I mean, you have to have a good
they're
power
at
play
12
because you have no idea what's going to be called.
They're at 12.7%, and the Penguins are number one at 33.3%.
Well, that's that gap is just humongous. The things I see are not enough movement, too much reliance on PK.
Big blast.
And when other teams started cutting off PK's shot, they didn't seem to know what to do. The two ways to beat it are movement and big guys in front, which might be why PK's friend is up here now.
His buddy is captain.
If you can put a 6'4", 250-pound guy with his butt in the goalie's face, it would really help.
That's going to be interesting.
But they, down low is where I see it. That's fine, Markov and PK moving it back and forth, but they don't know what to do down low.
Yeah.
They have no game plan except to get it back to the blue line. Well,
That's
the guys
right,
just
yeah.
block the shot.
Yeah, right. It seems like it's a constant cycling and then back to the point men and hope that they get something through. But shooting lanes, I mean, you know what? Another team's going to figure that out in a hurry. They're going to block. They're going to
figured
block
the
those
Canadiens
shooting
out, the
lanes.
power
And,
play.
By the way, that Pittsburgh power play, the greatest power play in the history of the league was the 77 Canadiens at 31.8. Right now they're ahead of that. So.
Now we lost a couple. Sorry, we lost a couple of legendary coaches this week in Victor Tikhonov and Pat Quinn. Ron, you've done a lot of international hockey over the years. Your memories or your thoughts about Victor?
Well, my main memory outside of the '87 Canada Cup, where he was front and center, but I remember having a lunch with Tikhonov in Quebec City when they were on one of those tours, and he was talking, the green unit, with Larionov and Krutov and Makarov, but he was talking about the next generation. He says, we've got 3 guys that are really going to be good. He says, we're, Bure, Fedorov, Mogilny coming on. That's going to be his new line. Yeah. Well, then Mogilny defected, everything opened up, and things changed. But he was a dictator. He was given the authority to control people's lives, and he put together probably, in my mind, the greatest hockey team ever.
And unfairly, I think, Ron, in a lot of ways, he is known probably most famously for the 1980 game in Lake Placid, where he pulled Vladislav Tretiak after 2 goals in the first period against the Americans in the medal round game, put in Vladimir Mishkin. Mishkin gives up 2. All that the Russians really had to do, I think, was tie or play reasonably well against Sweden. They would have won the gold medal, but instead, of course, the Americans win the thing. I spoke with Tretiak on 3 different occasions in Montreal, long interviews, and 3 times I tried to pry out of him, did you ever make it up with Tikhonov? Because he was just infuriated by the fact he was pulled. Yeah. I know that Tikhonov later on in life apologized. He said, you know what, I reacted by emotion. I pulled him. I never should have done that now. And 3 times, all that I got from Tretiak was, no, Tikhonov, mistake. Mistake. And then he would go off into some long thing in Russian, which I didn't understand. Finally, the 3rd time, he dug into his bag and he yanked this thing out and he said, you take this from Tikhonov and me. And that is a puck from the Russian Red Army. So I have this on my bookcase at home, and it always reminds me of Tikhonov and Tretiak and that some of those great
now, Jack, you said he was a big fan of Dave King.
Yeah, well, Dave King saved my butt with him because I was in Russia doing a series on Russian hockey. I got an interview with Tikhonov. I had a very competent translator. 10 minutes in, I've got about 8 words. What happened in 1980? Yet. I said, oh my God, this is the worst interview ever. And then I remembered that Dave had said, say hello to Tikhonov for me. I said, oh, by the way, Dave King says hello. Different guy. Oh, Dave King, an hour and a half later, my poor translator is choking to death. His voice is gone, and Tikhonov is still yakking. All because of Dave.
Pat Quinn, your memories or your thoughts about Pat?
Well, my main memory of him was putting together that team in Philadelphia that won, 35 games without a loss. Yeah. And, he was a hell of a coach. Very underrated guy, very smart. I remember when he was playing for the Leafs, he was still going to university and everything else, and he was, but
most honest coach I've ever seen. All those guys in Toronto used to gripe about him. I covered a few Leafs playoff series when the Habs were down and the Leafs were up, and I was just stunned at how frank he was. Mm-hmm. You could ask him anything, and he would try to answer the question. And he was smart, like you said. There was no BS.
Sergio Momesso was on the radio the other day saying he was the only coach he really, truly trusted. The thing I found interesting after he died on Twitter, when he went back and he coached the World Junior team, remember people were saying he wouldn't be able to relate to the young players? Well, John Tavares tweeted that with the impact that he had on his life, both on and off the ice. So he was a guy who could coach at different levels, and it didn't seem to really matter.
And he was the kind of guy who never figured that he knew it all. I mean, he would surround himself with good people, good assistants, and he would listen to them. And even when he was getting jobbed in Toronto and when things were turning south for him, he always took the high road. And that was a pretty good thing to do, given where he was and what his situation was in life at that point.
Now, the Buffalo Sabres are in town this weekend, the return of Brian Giunta. He has 2 goals and 5 assists in 21 games so far. He has a 3-year, $12.75 million contract. Are the Sabres going to regret that?
Yeah, I don't know. The Sabres are in that position where I don't think they really regret anything. They're waiting for...
They regret wins. They regret when they win.
They're waiting for Connor McDavid. And when he develops, Gianna will be gone, and I guess Josh Georges will be gone, and all those guys. So, you got to reach the floor on the salary, so okay, give it to Gianta.
A lot of these things always kind of seem like a good idea at the time, right? And hey, it's a great situation for Gianta. I mean, here's a guy who's been around the league a long time. He gets to play at home in front of family, friends, and so on. It was probably a tougher pill to swallow for Georges, who I think really believed he was going to be the next captain of this organization. Whether that would have happened or not, I don't know. But I mean, he was one of the guys who was accountable every day, every night, game in, game out, right, Ron? We would always see him in the dressing room, always.
I think the Sabres know there's rough times ahead, and they're paying for Gianta's leadership.
Yeah.
They're just hoping the snowstorms distract everyone from hockey.
That's right. Well, the 8th annual HIO Summit is this weekend with HIO fans from across North America and beyond coming in town to watch the Sabres play. So a special welcome and have a good weekend to Ian Cobb, the organizer of that, and everybody who's in town. Have fun, be safe. And I'd like to say a special hello to Alex Smith. He's a young Canadiens fan in Saskatchewan who has been battling meningitis. He's taken a bit of a turn for the worse, so our thoughts and our prayers are with him and his family. We'll be back next week with another episode of Hockey Inside Out.